Alright, Shalom. I want to begin by giving all glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahawashi, Bahashem Rechakodash. Double honor to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopefully elect. And Shalom to all the Akim pushing this truth with sincerity. Alright, it's your brother Itazawam from the GMS Columbus, Ohio branch. Coming back again with another video through the Spirit, Lord, as well as edifying. And pretty much continuing connecting ancient times to now. And I believe my last portion was concerning Acts 12, 1 through 4. All right, pretty much tying in, the hatred and perpetual hatred that Esau, Edom has had towards us. In particular, the Herodian dynasty, and how in the midst of, the building of the churches under the banner of Yahweh Shai, you had persecution that was coming from some of the Herods. Well, in particular, in this chapter, Herod Agrippa, which was the grandson of Herod the Great. Okay, and how he put James to death. Okay, and with that, let's read from verses 3, Acts 12 and 3. It says, when Herod saw how much this pleased the Jewish people, which is the Jews, he also arrested Peter. This took place during the Passover celebration, when he imprisoned him, placing him under the guard of 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring Peter out for public trial after the Passover, right? So, you had the persecution of the prophets happening, okay? And like I said, concerning the series connecting ancient times to now, we have to understand that ultimately these things will come upon us as well in this generation, those who serve Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua with truth and sincerity. All right, this is, a part of the calling and a part of what our Lord Yahweh Shai went through, okay? But real quick, let's get this Revelations 12:12. It says, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe unto the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he have but a short time, right? So understanding Esau, Edom's agenda, and ultimately the enterprise that he is trying to complete, we understand that, with the prophets in the midst, that has to cease, okay? He has to get rid of the prophets. So in that, he's going to try to forward persecution and things to eliminate us, okay? Because with the prophets on the scenes, chanting down at his kingdom, that ultimately is chiseling away at his kingdom as well via our words, all right? And he doesn't like that, okay? So it's going to come upon a time where, he's going to tap into that dragon, that he stems from, the Roman Empire, and act as such, okay? And come with those draconian laws. Like you say, he spake as a dragon, okay? Categorize us and, hem us up, imprisonment, torture methods, putting us to death, so on and so forth, okay? So, like I said, these things happen, during Yahweh Shai's time, and will happen once more to the prophets, okay? Let's get one more classic, Revelation 2:10, which, this is concerning the churches. In particular, which church was this? Was it Smyrna, I believe? Come. And, they were dealing, under the authority of Rome at this time. You had this, was the 7 churches in Asia Minor, okay? We're dealing with, the same things, all right? And we are those churches coming back. This is Revelation 2:10. It says, fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, that ye may be tried, and that ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life, right? And, we apply this to now through the Spirit, because when will these individuals receive that crown of life? All right, Lord willing, in this time, after, all prophecy is fulfilled, you see? So this is ultimately alluding to, times now, okay? In the sense that, in this time, once Esau, Edom is out of power and Yahweh Shai is raised up, he will place crowns upon his elect men, all right, his governing body, and ultimately the saints of the Most High, all right, the prophets, those who serve Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai with truth and sincerity, will be crowned with victory, okay? And will be crowned with that crown of life, all right? So let's jump back to Acts the 12th chapter, and pretty much I want to stick to the 5th verse on down. Pretty much just uh, ultimately bringing balance to the situation concerning those who are martyrs, etc. You also will have, cases where, divine intervention takes place. Okay. We ultimately know that, like the scriptures say, is in Psalms 116, precious in the sight of Yahweh is the death of his saints. All right. Although, dying in the name of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, wherever it may be, perishing, from illnesses or being a martyr, so on and so forth, is a precious thing. All right. It's a glorifying death. But also on the contrast, something that glorifies the Heavenly Father is deliverance, okay, via divine intervention, via his angels, via him, setting up the pieces for you to escape persecution or escape the hands of those who are pursuing you, okay? So let's dive into Acts 12 and 5. We're going to bring this out through the Spirit, get a good read in, all right, just to help boost, the faith of the sheep, boost the faith of the hopeful elect out there, that ultimately, some of us will not taste death, okay? Some of us, through the Spirit will, be raised up. We can't forget about spiritual power, all right? Because with Esau, Edom, and this AI shit, robots, etc., a standard. Let's get that lift up, standard. All right. Isaiah 59 and 19, it says, so shall they fear the name of Yahweh from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the spirit of Yahweh shall lift up a standard against him. You see? All right. Let's look at the word standard real quick. I'm just curious to see what this goes into. What's that? Nawas, if I'm not mistaken. All right. To flee, escape, to take flight, depart, disappear, to drive at, to take flight, to put to flight. You see? To drive hastily, to cause, to disappear, hide. All right. So the Lord's going to lift up a standard, via spiritual power or, just divine intervention, all right, against those who oppose us and try to persecute us or, put us to death in some cases, all right, in some cases, okay. But back to Acts 12, starting at verses 5. Okay, this is pretty much the imprisonment of Peter under the hands of Herod Agrippa. All right, let's go verses 5 NLT. It says, but while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him. The night before Peter was to be placed on trial, he was asleep, fastened with 2 chains between 2 soldiers. Others stood guard at the prison gate. Suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and an angel of Yahweh stood before Peter. See, so you're going to have cases where this can happen. All right, we understand that Esau, Edom, is the spirit 144. We understand that Esau, Edom, he's coming up and building all these concentration camps, these different prisons, so on and so forth. What's the alligator Alcatraz, Alcatraz, all right, etc. He's coming, all these like I said, concentration camps, etc. For us ultimately, okay. Like I said, he's gradually doing this thing, trying to categorize us and put us in a category of terrorists and criminals, etc. Even though we're not committing none of those acts, we're not flying planes into buildings, we're not strapping bombs to our chest. All right, we're not breaking no laws, etc. We tell our congregation to hey, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, abide by the laws, unless they go contrary to the ways of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. That's when we put our foot down. Okay, but hey, we stop at the traffic stops, we stop at the stop signs, we pay our taxes. Okay, we work 9 to 5s. All right, we wear our seat belts. We do all those things. Okay, but Esau Edom is coming up with different laws, the anti-Semitic laws, etc. Like I said, to ultimately categorize us. so that in the long run, as time goes by, when he's able to, come with these different tactics to hem us up, he's able to via his law, all right, and his constitution that he has set up. Okay. Where we at? It says the angels, or so like verse 7, it says, suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and an angel of Yahweh stood before Peter. The angel struck him on the side to awaken him and said, quick, get up. And the chains fell off his wrist. Then the angel told him, get dressed and put on your sandals. And he did. Now put on your coat and follow me, the angel ordered. So Peter left the cell following the angel, but all the time he thought it was a vision, right? So, the Lord, man, miracles are coming, bro. Okay, and we have to believe that divine intervention is coming. Real quick, let me look up that word. If it comes in the etymology, it may not. But let's look up divine, let's look up intervention. Pertaining to, of the nature of, or proceeding from the Most High, or a God. You see? Divine, belonging to a God, inspired. All right, prophetic, to shine. Okay? Matter of fact, let's do this. Divine intervention. Intervention. What the hell? Intervention. Divine intervention refers to a deity's active involvement in human affairs, believed to alter events and situations in accordance with a divine plan or purpose. This concept is found in various religions and belief systems, often involving miracles, guidance or protection. You see? So that's what's going to be happening as well in these times. Okay, and ultimately the Messiah coming back, Yahweh Shai, is going to be divine intervention, because that's ultimately the only way we're going to be able to escape and be delivered from the hell that we are currently in, under the hands of Esau Edom, the so-called white man. Okay? It reads, where we at, verses 9. NLT says, so Peter left the cell following the angel, but all the time he thought it was a vision. He didn't realize it was actually happening. They passed the first and second guard post and came to the iron gate leading to the city, and this opened for them all by itself. You see? So they passed through and started walking down the street, and then the angel suddenly left. All right, so you're going to have cases where, these things will happen. Well, Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai will be in the midst, okay, and guide us, all right, and lead us into the path of peace, man. All right, and keep us safe, because ultimately, like I said, there's going to be martyrs, but for a majority, man, there's going to be deliverance, man. All right, via the chariots. Okay, so the Lord is going to have to preserve those who those who aren't sanctioned to be martyrs. Okay, going to have to preserve those or that remnant of the 1/3 for deliverance, to glorify his name further. Okay, let's read on. It says, so they passed through and started walking down the street, and then the angel suddenly left him. Verse 11. Peter finally came to his senses. It's really true, he said. Right, so he's in a state where and pretty much in a trance almost, like he just he's looking at the situation as if he's dreaming, or it's just a vision, but whole time is real. Like, we're going to be in those situations, man, where the Lord's going to do some miraculous things in these times, and we have to believe it. Okay, and we read in that Isaiah 59. All right, the Lord's going to lift up a standard, a hiding place, or deliver us via putting people to flight, et cetera, whatever. Raising certain brothers up to get us out of situations via spiritual power. All right, may give us super speed. I remember having a dream, okay, a while back, maybe year 1 or year 2 in the truth. I'm approaching year 4, and I was pretty much in this situation where I was living in this building that had a blood bank. Okay, and pretty much Esau was, getting blood and, doing this, getting his drink on with it, whatever. And I was in the midst, and I was reporting these things to the brothers, etc., exposing Esau. And then Esau tried to come after me for that. You had this big Edomite who was in like a doctor's coat, trying to grab me up and shit, etc. And through the spirit, I escaped. And I remember we was in this tall building, and it was like this uh, spiral stairs going all the way around and down the building to like the main street. And I remember I was just zipping through, that staircase. It's going roundabout. It was uh, all types of officers in riot gear trying to, grab me up, and I was leaping and jumping and dodging and juking. And I remember, finally hitting the main street, and I was just running, at top speed. All right, a good, depiction I can think of is if Jake ever watched it, the what's it called, Avengers Infinity War with Thanos. But pretty much the scene when they were running and charging, Thanos' army in Wakanda. You had Black Panther and Captain America who was just running, at top speeds, and pretty much just blew a gap in the, the soldiers behind them, you know. And it was something like that, man. I remember, as I was running, it was like my vision just went to an aerial view, and I just seen myself running towards the wilderness. And in the midst of, the aerial view, I just seen helicopters coming after me, man. It was crazy. All right, but hey, the Lord can do that, man. All right, we have, situations where, men, in a sense, had some form of spiritual power. Samson, his strength. We say David could leap walls. Okay, you had men who were fast as roes or deers. Okay, so the Lord can raise us up, man. All right, and he will raise some of us up in that time, man, to get us out of certain situations when Esau comes through with the sword, man. Okay, so let's read some more, and then we're gonna call it that. Verses 11 says, Peter finally came to his senses. It's really true. He said, Yahweh has sent his angel and saved me from Herod and from what the Jewish leaders had planned to do to me, right? The Sanhedrin. It says, when he realized this, he went to the home of Mary, the mother of John Mark, where many were gathered for prayer. He knocked at the door, right? And that's beautiful, man. Just going to show you again, just reading verses 12. All right, that it was small sanctuaries that were set up in the midst of women's house, men's houses. Those who could provide, man. It's not about big churches and these super huge congregations and the money. It was just small sanctuaries of sincere men and women, man. All right, and children in the midst. Verse 13, it says he knocked at the door and the gate, and a servant girl named Rhoda came to open it. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed that instead of opening the door, she ran back inside and told everyone Peter is standing at the door. You're out of your mind, they said. When she insisted, they decided it must be his angel. Meanwhile, Peter continued knocking. When they finally opened the door and saw him, they were amazed and motioned for them to quiet down and told them how Yahweh had led him out of prison. Tell James and the other brothers, right? This would be, I believe, James the Lesser, all right, because James the Greater is the one that was persecuted by Herod Agrippa, all right, just so we, understand what we're reading and, not getting tripped up because a lot of people don't know that, But let me make sure. I believe this is James, which is Yahushai's brother, James the Lesser, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. In this particular verse, yep, which would be James the Lesser. You had James the Lesser and James the Greater. All right, yep, an apostle, son of Alphaeus, called the Less, the high, right? All right, if I'm not mistaken, let me make sure I'm correct. You see, Right, apostle, right, James' brother, right, or John's brother, Salakia. This may come up the same. Yep, date of death, yep, 44 AD, decapitation. St. John's patron saint in Spain, according to the tradition, man, held in Santiago. Yep. Martyred, yep. It's concerning, yep. Which would be James the Greater. Okay. The fuck is all this? Yep. Just making sure we good and correct. I'm gonna look up some more though. Yep, James the Great. Yep. Just ratification, you know. All right, come on. It's like it. I like looking stuff up and studying and, you know, get all drawn in. But just good information so we understand who we're dealing with, you know, through the Spirit. All right. James the Greater. All right. As you can see, was one of the 12 apostles of Yahushua according to the New Testament. He was the second of the apostles to die after Judas Iscariot, and the first to be martyred. St. James is the patron saint of Spain, and according to tradition, what are believed to be his remains are held in Santiago de Compostela in Galatia. All right, but you know, of course, we know he ain't look like that, but you know how Esau do. But yep. Just for reference and like I said, so we understand what we're reading. All right. Because, you know, it's a lot of recurring names, you know, etc. in the scriptures. But let's get one more verse and then we're going to call it that, Lord's will. Yep. It says, but while Peter was in prison, the church prayed very earnestly for him. The night before Peter was to be placed on trial, he was asleep fastened with 2 chains between two soldiers. Others stood guard at the prison gate. Suddenly there was a bright light in the cell, and an angel of Yahweh stood before Peter. The angel struck him on the side, awakened him, and said, quick, get up, and the chains fell off his wrists. Then the angel told him, get dressed and put on your sandals, and he did. Now put on your coat and follow me, the angel ordered. So Peter left the cell following the angel, but all the time he thought it was a vision. Hold on, Salakia. I'm tripping. I'm down here, verse 18. Salakia. Okay, verse 18. It says, at dawn there was a great commotion among the soldiers about what had happened to Peter. Herod Agrippa ordered a thorough search for him. When he couldn't be found, Herod interrogated the guards and sentenced them to death. Afterward, Herod left Judea to stay in Caesarea for a while, right? And that's just beautiful that ultimately those who tried to persecute him, or in particular the ones who held him captive, the prison guards, were put to death, man. Okay. Verse 20, it says, now Herod was very angry with the people of Tyre and Sidon, so they sent a delegation to make peace with him because their cities were dependent upon Herod's country for food. The delegates won the support of Blattus, Herod's personal assistant. An appointment with Herod was granted. When the day arrived, Herod put on his royal robe, sat on his throne, and made a speech to them. All right. People gave him ovations, shouting, it's the voice of a God, not of a man, right? So they was kissing ass, man. All right, instantly an angel of Yahweh struck Herod with a sickness because he accepted the people's worship instead of giving the glory to the Most High. So he was consumed with worms and died. Meanwhile, the word of the Most High continued to spread, and there were many but new believers. When Barnabas and Saul had finished their mission to Jerusalem, they returned taking John Mark with them. All right, plain. Okay, so, through the Spirit, that's the conclusion of Acts 12th chapter. All right, pretty much just tapping into divine intervention. All right, how the Lord will lift up a standard, upon us. And, in certain situations and cases, as, Esau continues to build these prisons, these concentration camps, etc. Ultimately, like I said, to categorize those who believe in Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh and imprison them. Hey, the Lord in some cases will, intervene, man, and get us out of situations, have angels appear, so on and so forth, man. So we got a lot of miracles to look forward to. And Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh is going to work for his elect, man. Okay. So Lord's will, that was edifying to those who may receive it. Gonna give all glory and praises to Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Rachak Wadash. Shalom.